There was a man with a dream more than 60 years ago. This man was a black man in a time during segregation, in a time before the internet existed, in a time before middle and low class probably could even afford a telephone in their home, much less the service. This man had a dream. This man was able to gather 1 million people to march to the very steps of the ones who are supposed to work for us, not against us. And there was no violence from them then, only violence against them as they tried to make their way there. One black man did this. And he didn't just do it for black people. He did it for every person. And he laid down his life for it. He paid the price with his life. And so did 2 white men right along with him, John F. Kennedy and Robert F. Kennedy. They both died because they believed in that man's dream. Are you going to let that dream of freedom and peace and unity die in vain? Because today we don't need violence. We have internet today. We have a phone in just about every person's hand across this world. In the modern common world. And even in places where they don't have running water, or clean water for that matter, nor a food every day, but they have a cell phone in their hand. And they've got a place to charge it, but they don't have they don't have a pot to piss in or a window to throw it out of. We have men with over $100 billion. But as Dax said, how are there still people living poor in the streets? How does one man own a collective 750 million acres of property, of land on this planet? And there are people that live on the streets or have died living on the streets, while this man profits from pharmaceutical companies. While the governments are paying farmers to destroy their crops, pennies on the dollar. And nobody's doing anything. Everybody's standing and waiting for someone to stand up. The problem today is, as the Department of Homeland Security released the 13th of August, anybody ideologically opposed to the things going on today is deemed a domestic terrorist. Whether they're about a peaceful resolve or the many who expect and declare that there must be bloodshed. It's because their hearts are wicked. They're angry. If you think there must be bloodshed, your spirit is not in the right place. Your heart is not in the right place, nor is your mind working clearly, nor are you seeking out the correct path. Somebody told me recently, declared recently, that bloodshed is a necessary evil to manage population growth. There is no such thing as any necessary evil. Evil is a concept of the mind of man. Man has made the concept of evil. Man has put it in his heart to do evil. Man has put it in his heart to be wicked, to hate, to take, to pillage, to strip other men of their dignity and of their freedom and of their natural rights to the resources that surround us. The company can go cut down an entire forest, but you or I have to have permission, we have to pay for permission to go fishing, to catch a fish if we wanted to feed our family that way. In many states across the country of America, you have to have approval and a permitted system for collecting rainwater, even to water your garden. In many states, if you're caught collecting it without a regulated system, you'll be fined an extremely ridiculous amount of money. Because somebody decided they wanted to either overfish or over control and say, we got to make money on these people that are fishing to eat because they're not buying from the grocery stores. No more blood for oil. We got our own battles to fight on our own soil is a song lyric from the 2004 song by Eminem called Mosh. There are provisions in place where our military cannot come in and directly defend us on the homeland without a declaration from the president or the administrator. Those who claim, let me reword this. Let me try to be as respectful and as clear as possible. There are many who believe that they have fought for our freedoms. At one time, yes, maybe. But that was when every man left his home and went out and defended the future of his children and his children's children. Since I've been alive, my 34 years, the only wars that I can find have nothing to do with freedom in a free country. It has everything to do with the resources another country has that this country can benefit from and profit off of. We've been in Afghanistan as long as we have for more reasons than just holding back terrorism. The United States military has been in Afghanistan to protect the poppy fields for the opiate industry. You don't believe me? Ask around. These wars are not for our freedom. These wars are for resources, for the rich and powerful corporations. That cause us to be reliant on their product. Because there's so much available land on this planet that is held by governments in the hands of the rich and powerful that don't want to share. Ask yourself, are you tired? Because Because the loudest way to speak to them is for every single one of us to march up to the foot of those steps and stop and stand shoulder to shoulder. Even though it would violate their social distancing. Stand shoulder to shoulder and tell them we're not going anywhere until the people have control of the economy again and the government again. They're trying to get rid of the filibuster for a reason. They made it nearly illegal to protest in D.C. anymore. I don't even call this a protest. I call this a stand for freedom. An immovable wall. Millions of people. Millions of people with families and loved ones that have been affected by all this man-made virus. I encourage you to seek out Dr. Barrett's research out of Wilmington, North Carolina, as Rand Paul mentioned, and question Dr. Anthony Fauci about. Because this research was going on in Wilmington, North Carolina since probably 2017 or 2018. And there was a transfer of the information from the lab in Wilmington, North Carolina to the lab in Wuhan, China. And that transfer happened sometime the end of September or October of 2019. And yes, it is very hard to verify this. But I can assure you, many North Carolinians had one hell of a case of a sinus infection, or SARS, severe acute respiratory syndrome, before COVID was identified. At 34 years of age, I remember in 2003, I got my first ever sinus infection. Well, ironically enough, 2002 is when the SARS virus was actually released. And you can verify this one too, it was released. I remember it. This voice is mine. It's nobody else's. I don't really have anybody that takes me seriously. At least they don't show it. But to take a stand does not mean that you want to hurt anybody. That you're trying to cause any type of actions that would get anybody harmed. But I want you to sit back with me and picture this. Dr. King brought 1 million people before internet and widespread telephone service, before it was affordable, the telephone service that is. $10 to 15 million bodies divided between New York City and Washington, D.C., to let our voices be heard, that we're tired of being oppressed, that we're tired of being controlled and being put in predicaments where we have to choose between submitting to a pharmaceutical company to keep a job, to voice that we're tired of the extreme taxes because our forefathers rebelled against the tea tax and we have yet to rebel, but we want our voice heard. Power is in the people, a united people of one mindset, that we want the corruption gone. We want the capitalists gone that benefit and make money on pandemics and emergencies, that take advantage of disasters. And make money off of people in their worst possible situations, while throwing out benefits and stimulus checks to subdue and pacify people. While causing people to take an experimental vaccine that's under emergency use authorization. It's not even licensed yet. Understand where I'm going with this. It is still in the testing phase. It is still experimental. And I need you to understand that test subjects involved in an experiment where you hold a test material within you. If the experimenter requests that experiment back and it's in your blood, they're going to take you. Think about it. The property of the pharmaceutical companies, of which that they are not releasing the formula, once it's licensed, and they want to reclaim that formula, or they want to reclaim their product, repossess their product. You are now a part of their product. You are a part of their livestock now. You are the experiment. And if you do not believe this, you need to look in the law of possession. Submission has always been the downfall of humankind throughout history. Submission has caused genocide. This submission can also be called complacency. Being lukewarm, as a Christian would refer to it. As the natives would say, having one foot in the canoe and one foot in the boat. It is the most dangerous position to be in, is in between. And there's a difference between neutral and in between. There's a very, very fine dividing line for that. I can't encourage you which side to pick. But I can say this. The only right way to remove these wrongs that are being done to innocent people and innocent families is to use your voice, to use your mind, and not a weapon, and not a physical weapon of war. Not something that sheds blood. Of course, words can destroy. But you're not using your words on the innocent. You're using your words on the guilty who are supposed to be executing righteous judgment and keeping righteous authority. The same ones who have monetized positions that were supposed to be a privilege because you were entrusted to hold that seat, to do the right thing and to protect everyone. Not to create law that is lawless. Like a declaration providing immunity from liability of any countermeasures that come out of an emergency. There's less than a month until the 20th anniversary of 9/11. And as the DHS and the HSA, the Department of Homeland Security, they have declared anybody with an opposing ideological view or any other term that you can place on anybody that doesn't agree with anything that's going on today, regardless of a political affiliation, regardless of a religious belief, anybody that opposes the current narrative or questions anything that has been said or points out something that was said one time and never repeated again by any media source, or anybody whose voice has been canceled out by these major tech moguls and their rules, you have to understand you're still using their user agreements. You've accepted their user agreements. You have entered into a binding contract to obey their rules, to use their product. These are the same people influencing and paying politicians, the oppressors spoiling the politicians. The oppressors are business. The oppressors are the corporations. The spoiled ones are the politicians because they're getting paid to do as they're told to do. They're being paid by businessmen to run the agenda. These businessmen have bios that title them as TV personalities. you stand? Will you stand beside a fellow American that is just as oppressed as you and not notice that by perception they appear to look different than you? Are you willing to stand there for one common cause, shoulder to shoulder with a brother or a sister, with your fists in the air and your feet on the ground, without a weapon in sight, and use the weapon that is your voice to tell them that we're tired of it, we're done with it, and use the tools around us, like the live stream abilities, to show the world that we're not ignorant idiots that are laying down while the third world countries, as we're told to label them, are doing what we should have been doing a long time ago. This is psychological warfare. What are you going to do?